Good morning, everyone. Let me ask you a question. What did you do this past year that truly mattered to you? Not what you had to do, not what was expected of you. I mean, what did you do that made you feel alive? If you're struggling to answer, you're not alone. Most people live by habit, not intention. They survive years instead of living them. And when another year ends, they look back and say, where did the time go? So today, let's pause and ask, why are we letting our time drift by like this? One, the cost of later. We love to tell ourselves someday I'll start the business. Someday I'll get in shape. Someday I'll write the book. But here's the truth. Someday is the easiest way to waste the next 365 days. 1 year becomes two become five, and suddenly the window to act is shrunk. Understand this, you don't run out of time because the clock stops. You run out of time because you never started. Clarity comes from action. Not thought so many people wait until they feel ready, but waiting for clarity is like waiting for perfect weather to plant a tree. The truth is, clarity is not a prerequisite to action. Clarity is the result of action. You don't figure life out in your head. You figure it out by doing, by testing, by learning, by failing forward. So if you're unsure of your next step, good. That means you're growing. Now take the step anyway. 3, direction is more important than speed in the rush to be successful. We often confuse movement with progress. But what's the use of running fast if it's in the wrong direction? This year, don't focus on doing more. Focus on doing what matters. That starts with asking better questions. What kind of person do I want to become? What am I doing today that aligns with that? What am I doing that doesn't? Your answers will become your compass. 4, discipline is not restriction, it's freedom. We're taught to think discipline is hard. But here's what's harder: regret, wasted potential, realizing you lived on autopilot. Discipline is the decision to show up for yourself daily, to design your time before the world does it for you. You don't need a dramatic overhaul. You need small, consistent actions aligned with a clear why. Be brutally honest about what's not working. Reflection isn't just about gratitude, it's also about truth. Where did you say yes when you meant no? Where did you avoid discomfort and stay small? What patterns are you repeating that are holding you back? If you're willing to face these questions head on, then this year can be the most intentional year of your life, because the goal isn't just to live another year, it's to live a year that counts. So what now? Don't wait for motivation. Don't wait for the right time. Don't waste another year waiting to be ready. Be willing to start scared. Be willing to begin again. Be willing to live with intention. Because the only thing more expensive than effort is regret. Fev keynotes from the speech. Someday is the biggest thief of time. Act now. Clarity doesn't come before action. It comes from action. Progress is about direction, not speed. Align before accelerating. Discipline isn't punishment. It's a path to freedom. Self-honesty is the beginning of meaningful change. We all have a word that quietly delays our potential someday. It's deceptively comforting. It lets us feel like we're not giving up on our dreams, just postponing them. We say, someday I'll start working out. Someday I'll go back to school. Someday I'll take that leap. But someday has no calendar date. It's not real. It doesn't exist. And yet we build entire lives around it. The truth is, every time you say someday, you're handing your time to uncertainty. You're telling your goals, your growth, and even your happiness to wait in a line that has no end. What we don't often realize is that this delay doesn't come free. Someday charges interest. Every year you wait, the cost of starting increases, not just practically, but mentally and emotionally. Doubt grows. Confidence fades. Life piles on more responsibilities. The energy to begin something new becomes harder to summon. And slowly, what once was a calling becomes a whisper, and eventually, silence. Why do we lean on someday so much? Because it makes us feel safe. It's a mental shortcut we use to avoid fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of change. Saying not now gives us the illusion of control, but that illusion is fragile because time doesn't wait for readiness. Time moves. Every second we delay, the gap between where we are and where we want to be widens, and that gap is never closed with intentions. It's closed with action. Many people reach the end of a year and wonder, how did another year go by so fast? It went by the same as the last one. It wasn't faster. It was just filled with habits instead of decisions, routines instead of purpose, someday instead of today. And the uncomfortable part is that if nothing changes, next year will feel the same. Not because you didn't care, but because you didn't act. Caring and acting are not the same thing. Caring gives you concern. Acting gives you results. There's a moment in everyone's life when they realize they're not waiting for the right time. They're just avoiding discomfort. And the longer they wait, the more they'll look back and wish they started earlier. This is especially true when we see others doing the things we said we would do. We feel jealousy, but it's not about them. It's a reflection of our own procrastinated potential. And that stings not because others succeeded, but because we know we could have too. Here's the deeper truth. You're never going to feel perfectly ready. No one does. The people who move forward don't do it because they're fearless. They do it because they decided that not trying was worse than trying and failing, that the pain of regret was heavier than the fear of imperfection. They understood that time is not a resource you can save and spend later. It's only spent once. Every day, whether you use it or not, we often think of wasted time as hours doing nothing. But the real wasted time is the life unlived, the potential unexplored, the goals untouched, the relationships not repaired or pursued. That's the kind of waste that lingers. And it usually starts with someday. If you have a dream, a desire, a goal, or a habit you know would change your life, even in small ways, there is no later that guarantees it will be easier. What you have is now. And if you can take one step, however small today, you begin to replace someday with momentum. You shift your story from, I wish I had too, I'm glad I did. That's a quiet but powerful revolution, one choice at a time. There's a common belief that before we can make big decisions or start something meaningful, we need to have it all figured out. We wait for clarity to arrive like it's a package being delivered to our doorstep. We think that once we feel completely certain, completely ready, then we'll begin. But clarity doesn't work that way. It's not something you sit around and wait for. It's something you uncover through motion, through engagement, through effort. The mistake most people make is thinking that thinking alone will solve everything. They overanalyze, plan endlessly, hesitate, and second guess. But while thought is valuable, it has limits. The human mind is good at creating hypothetical outcomes, both good and bad, but it can't replace the real lessons that come from doing. Clarity, the kind that actually shapes your path and reveals your direction, doesn't live in your imagination. It lives in experience. You can't learn to swim by reading about it. You have to get in the water. Often, the first step toward clarity feels messy. It might feel awkward, uncertain, even wrong. But that's part of the process. In fact, confusion at the beginning is not a sign you're failing. It's a sign you're in motion. You're stretching beyond your comfort zone. And it's in that stretch where understanding begins to form. You make a decision, test it, see the result, and adjust. Each small movement, each honest effort reveals something you couldn't have predicted just by thinking. That's how people find their passion, by the way. Not by sitting in a room trying to guess what they love, but by exploring, trying, failing, and feeling their way forward. Passion is uncovered through curiosity followed by consistent effort. If you wait until you know exactly where your passion lies, you'll likely wait forever. The ones who figure it out are the ones willing to begin before the picture is complete. And this doesn't just apply to careers or personal goals. It applies to relationships, health, creativity, everything. People often say, I don't know if I'm ready to commit to this relationship, or I'm not sure if this is the right business idea, or I don't know if I'm cut out for this role. But those answers rarely arrive in advance. You grow into the answers by participating. You discover the truth by showing up, paying attention, and staying involved long enough to learn. Clarity earned through action is far more powerful than clarity imagined in thought. Why? Because it's grounded. It's not based on assumption or fear. It's based on real feedback. And even if you're wrong, even if the action you take turns out to be a misstep, that too gives you direction. Now, you know what doesn't work. Now you can pivot. That's progress. The fear of making the wrong choice often paralyzes people into making no choice at all. But what's worse, choosing something imperfect and learning from it, or choosing nothing and learning nothing? The idea that we can chart the perfect path in advance is a myth. The perfect path only becomes visible in hindsight after we've walked it. And even then, it wasn't perfect. It was made perfect through constant movement and refinement. So the invitation is simple. Don't wait to feel certain. Start with what you know, even if that's not much. Start where you are, even if it's unclear. Start scared. Start small. Start without a full plan, but start. Because every step forward creates new information. Every decision made creates a clearer picture. And before you know it, what once felt confusing begins to make sense. Not because you waited for clarity, but because you earned it through action. In a world that glorifies speed, it's easy to mistake motion for progress. We admire the fast mover, the quick decision maker, the one who seems to always be on the go. But moving fast doesn't mean you're moving well. You can be running at full speed and still be headed in the wrong direction. And the faster you move without alignment, the further you drift from what actually matters. This obsession with speed starts early. We're taught to achieve more, sooner. We're asked, what's next? Before we've even settled into what's now. Students are pressured to pick careers before they understand their strengths. Entrepreneurs rush to scale ideas they haven't tested. Professionals climb ladders without stopping to ask whether the ladder is leaning against the right wall. It's all about how fast we can get there, but we rarely stop to ask where there even is. True progress starts with direction. It begins with asking deep questions. What kind of life do I actually want? What values do I want to live by? What does success mean to me? Not to society, not to my parents, not to my peers, but to me. These questions are uncomfortable. They require reflection. They take time, but they are the questions that prevent wasted years and misplaced effort. Without them, we become efficient at doing the wrong things faster. Direction gives your energy purpose. When you're clear on where you're headed and why, every step has meaning even if it's slow. And ironically, once your direction is right, you often start to move faster naturally because you're no longer distracted by things that don't matter. You say no more easily. You focus more clearly. You work with more purpose and less doubt. But none of that is possible without first aligning your efforts with your values. Many people fear slowing down because they equate slowness with failure. They think that if they're not constantly busy, they're falling behind. But busy isn't the same as productive. And productive doesn't always mean effective. You can be productive in tasks that don't move your life forward. You can be effective at reaching goals that were never truly yours to begin with. This is why some people achieve great success and still feel empty, because they were chasing speed, not direction. It's okay to pause. It's okay to question the path you're on, even if you've invested years into it. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. We often feel stuck not because we lack the ability to move forward, but because we've never taken the time to reorient. Life changes. You grow. Your goals evolve. Staying on the same track just because you started there is not loyalty. It's stagnation. Real growth means checking your compass, not just your calendar. This mindset also applies to the day, today. In your daily habits, are you rushing through tasks just to check them off? Or are you doing the things that actually move you toward who you want to become? It's not about having the longest to-do list. It's about having the right one. Being intentional, even in small things, is how meaningful change is made. Consistency in the right direction always outperforms intensity in the wrong one. The pressure to be fast is external. The desire to be aligned is internal. And when you choose alignment over acceleration, your actions start to reflect who you truly are, not who you're trying to impress. You stop sprinting through life and start walking your path with purpose. That's not slower. That's smarter. Because at the end of the day, the quality of your life won't be measured by how quickly you got somewhere. It will be measured by how aligned you were with what actually mattered along the way. Discipline is often misunderstood. For many people, the word itself carries a heavy weight, one tied to restriction, discomfort, and rigidity. It brings to mind rules, early mornings, strict diets, or endless routines. We've been conditioned to think of discipline as something that takes away from our lives. But in reality, discipline is not about limitation, it's about liberation. When it's applied with purpose, discipline becomes one of the most powerful tools for personal freedom. Most of the things we truly want, health, peace of mind, financial stability, meaningful relationships, creative expression, require consistency. They don't show up overnight, and they certainly don't arrive through motivation alone. They are the result of repeated effort over time. That repeated effort is discipline. It's the quiet, steady commitment to showing up even when we don't feel like it. It's not glamorous, it's not always exciting, but it works. Without discipline, we become slaves to our impulses. We eat what feels good in the moment and regret it later. We procrastinate on work and carry the stress for days. We scroll endlessly because it's easy, not because it's fulfilling. And slowly we lose control, not all at once, but in small, invisible ways. Lack of discipline feels like freedom in the short term, but it leads to chaos in the long term. You can't build a stable, meaningful life on convenience alone. On the other hand, discipline gives you control over your own time, attention, and direction. When you choose discipline, you're not choosing to suffer, you're choosing to own your choices. You're saying, I'd rather face a little discomfort now than a lot of regret later. You're making intentional decisions instead of default ones. That is freedom, the kind that doesn't come from escape, but from structure. Think of any skill or strength you admire, whether it's a great athlete, an artist, a teacher, or a leader. It wasn't talent alone that brought them there. It was discipline. Talent might give you a head start, but discipline determines the finish line. It's the muscle behind mastery. It's what keeps you going after motivation fades. And it always fades. That's why relying on motivation is risky. It's too emotional, too inconsistent. Discipline, on the other hand, is reliable. You don't have to feel like it. You just do it. But discipline isn't about being robotic. It's about being intentional. It doesn't mean every minute of your day is scheduled or that you never rest. In fact, discipline includes rest. It means doing what needs to be done, whether that's working, learning, moving, or taking care of your body and mind. It's about prioritizing long-term value over short-term comfort. And paradoxically, that's how you create more ease in your life. When you're disciplined about your health, you feel stronger. When you're disciplined with money, you feel less stress. When you're disciplined with your time, you're more present and less overwhelmed. The hardest part of discipline is the beginning. At first, it feels unnatural. You resist it. You bargain with yourself. You fall off and question whether it's even worth it. That's normal. But discipline isn't built in perfect days. It's built in the choice to begin again and again and again. Every time you return to your commitment, you prove to yourself that you're capable. You build trust with yourself. And that's where true confidence comes from, not just from success, but from showing up consistently, even when it's hard. When you start seeing discipline not as something that takes life away from you, but as something that gives life back to you, everything changes. You stop resenting effort and start respecting it. You stop waiting for the right mood and start honoring the right habit. That's how discipline becomes a form of self-respect. And that's when you realize it was never about restriction. It was always about freedom. One of the most dangerous choices we make isn't a bad decision. It's no decision at all. Inaction is subtle. It doesn't make noise. It doesn't announce itself. It's easy to justify because on the surface, it feels safe. It feels like avoiding risk. You tell yourself, I'll wait a bit longer or maybe later, and nothing seems to change in that moment. But that's exactly the danger. Inaction rarely feels urgent until it's too late. Unlike failure, which gives you lessons and feedback, inaction gives you nothing. There are no results to analyze, no progress to measure. Time just slips through your fingers. You look back after months or even years and realize you're still standing in the same spot, not because you tried and failed, but because you never tried at all. And that realization often comes with regret. Not for what you did, but for what you didn't do when you had the chance. People often wait for the right time, believing that clarity, motivation, or circumstances will eventually align perfectly. But time doesn't wait for us to feel ready. Life doesn't freeze while we decide. While we hesitate, opportunities quietly pass us by. Skills that could have been learned go unpracticed. Habits that could have been formed remain unbuilt. Relationships that could have been strengthened slowly fade. And all the while, the cost of inaction is accumulating, not in dollars or visible damage, but in lost potential. What makes this cost so dangerous is that it's invisible in the moment. When you procrastinate, you don't feel the impact right away. Nothing explodes. No alarm goes off, but the effect is real. You begin to carry a quiet weight, a sense of unfinished work, of missed growth, of stagnation. You start to lose confidence, not because you failed, but because you stayed still. That stillness breeds self-doubt. It creates a gap between who you are and who you know you could be. The irony is that we often avoid action because we're afraid of pain, failure, discomfort, uncertainty. But in doing so, we create a different kind of pain. One that's slower and harder to detect. It's the pain of watching life pass you by while you wait for a sign. It's the pain of watching others grow while you stay stuck. And it's the pain of waking up one day and realizing the window of opportunity has quietly closed. This doesn't mean you need to act recklessly or rush into everything, but it does mean you need to be honest about what waiting is costing you. Is your delay based on thoughtful timing, or is it driven by fear disguised as logic? Is your hesitation helping you prepare better, or is it just keeping you comfortable in the short term while quietly stealing your future? The truth is, action, even imperfect action, always leads to movement. It leads to data. You learn, you adjust, you grow. An action leads only to more of the same. If nothing changes, nothing changes. Every goal you've ever dreamed of achieving, every version of yourself you want to become requires movement. Not leaps, just steps. Forward motion, however small, is the antidote to regret. It's the only way to turn potential into progress. The cost of inaction isn't just what you don't get, it's who you don't become. Every day you delay is a day you don't practice the discipline, build the resilience, or gain the experience that could shape your future. And eventually, the silence of inaction becomes the loudest regret, not because you failed, but because you'll never know what could have happened if you had simply started. That's the true weight of inaction. It hides quietly behind excuses, only to reveal its full cost when there's no more time to reclaim it. So if there's one truth to carry with you from here, let it be this: your life doesn't transform in one massive leap. It changes the moment you stop waiting and start moving. Clarity comes from action, not contemplation. Progress comes from alignment, not speed. Discipline is not your enemy, it's your gateway to freedom. And the real cost of doing nothing isn't felt today, but later, when time has already made its decision without you. You don't need to have everything figured out. You don't need to be fearless, but you do need to care enough about your future to stop letting another year slip away to indecision, distraction, or doubt. You owe yourself more than that. This isn't about hustle. It's about intention. It's not about doing more. It's about doing what matters. You don't have to rush, but you do have to start, because while time is patient, it is never generous with second chances. This year can look different, not by accident, but by choice. And that choice begins now.